Greetings everyone, Sarah Thunderman here from the Effect Sabers forum, here to show off my latest completed lightsaber creation, my fourth saber, the Sith Rose. There she is. So as you can see, it is a regular hilted lightsaber, only it's sort of got three little crossguard quillions that, well, they light up. So I guess without further ado I should probably show that. So let's take the blade plug out. Little blade plug I made with a dead quadcopter motor a friend gave me. And put a regular blade in. Place them up and press the little button. Heavy. Press the button. Boot. I've got a red, blue Tri-Cree in there. Blue for the flash on flash, as you can, well, see. Set it off. And each quillion is, each thorn really is activated by, illuminated by a simple 5mm red LED. It's powered by my last Nanobiscotte V3 that I had on hand, and in it I've got two sound fonts. I've got Lord Lacko's Pitch Dark, I think, Pitch Black, and also his, oh god, was it Kyber? Yes, Kyber from the Crystal Harvest collection. So I really like the little staticky, hissy sound it made. I thought it went quite well along with the idea of the unstable blade. So let's just put the blade plug back in and let's open up the core, because this is a fully revealable core. Now, I've only got the core held back by one screw there. There's three all the way around. It's just easier when I'm doing it on camera to just have the one. So here is the core. This is an, well, 50% scratch built core. The upper half is all aluminium tubing and aluminium pieces, bolted and hand filed and hand drilled, well, drill press drilled together. Some examples of hand filing and drilling. The little brass accents that you can see are guitar string ferrules that I snapped in half and very carefully superglued in. The lower half of the core is a 3D printed shape raise piece that I designed myself, modelled after the MHS ribbed extensions. The recharge port goes directly into the body, and that was a mistake I'm not making again, because it was an absolute bloody nightmare to get the recharge port wired in there in the first place. The crystal chamber, as you can see, runs off the deep sleep pad of the Nanobiscotte, so the crystal is always glowing. When I activate it, additional accent LEDs turn off. Additional accent LEDs in the little spikes in the chamber turn on, so it's sort of to give the illusion that they're sucking away. They're miniaturized things that are sucking away plasma into each of the little thorns. Just going to leave that there for now. So yeah, I guess that's just about it. No, it's not. I was about to publish this video, well, 5 minutes before this that I'd shot last night, and I realised that I hadn't actually said much or anything at all about the build process for this lightsaber. So I'm just going to shoot a quick bit of video, hopefully, now to try and explain the design and yeah, how I built it. So yeah, let's go. So there's really three main points that started this build. The first was the that after I finished my Catan build, still my favourite lightsaber, I asked my friends and family and colleagues and everyone I knew what direction they'd like me to go in next for my next lightsaber build. I gave a couple of options, and the overwhelming winner of that poll was a Sith Lord lightsaber. So I knew I was going to the dark side. The second direction really is my pure hatred of Kylo Ren's lightsaber. I hate the hilt. I really cannot stand Kylo Ren's hilt. I think it's just ugly mess, and there are so many better lightsabers. We've had so many better lightsabers in Star Wars in the past. Well, not anymore, given that the past no longer exists. Gee, thanks Disney. We've had so many good Sith designs in the past, and Kylo Ren's design is just such a letdown. But, that said, I really like all the elements that go into it. I like the idea of the cracked crystal that produces an unstable blade, and the unstable blade plasma or blaster energy or whatever it is now has to be vented out to the side and it forms crossguards. That I like. Everything else, the end design, I can't stand it. The final element of the design was a floral-inspired lightsaber design that I came up with, actually once more in the final stages of my Catan build. I had to remove all the MHS sections from the main body tube so that I could paint them first, and when the paint failed, anodize them. And that meant that I had to take all the parts that were loose on the hilt without the MHS tubes and put them somewhere. So I just bolted them straight to the body, and I just bolted this MHS shroud directly onto the body, and it gave an interesting effect. See, the light from the crystal chamber just about peeks out. You can see a very small amount of green light there. And when this was bolted to the tube, that very small amount of green light was a glowing halo. So I took that idea and just wondered what could you do with it if you were to replicate this 120-degree section 3 times over a body. And that sort of gave me a floral pattern, a sort of flower petal type vent. So I had the rough idea for a flower or floral inspired design for a lightsaber. I had the Sith Lord direction, and I had the vented crossguard idea to work with. So I got around to working on that. Now my initial design was, oh look, it's this lightsaber again, a spin-off of the Catan design. I was going to make something similar in that it would have the same 1 1/8 inch body tube, and instead of using just a MHS grooved piece there, I was going to buy a what's it called? Ribbed and grooved combo, the one that looks like Obi-Wan's lightsaber, and attach it there, and then there would be that emitter pattern, floral emitter vent pattern on the top there. That design was a bit of a failure, mainly because of the one inherent flaw in this lightsaber type design, the really thin handled one. There is only 1 inch of inner diameter tube on this lightsaber, which means that all the components have to be fitted in to 1 inch, which means that you cannot, say, put the as you would commonly in an MHS lightsaber, say, put the sound card on top of the battery. You have to have the sound card behind or in front of the battery, which means that in this lightsaber the sound card is jammed in very much, it's got about 1 millimeter to spare on each side of it. It's jammed in there, and I can't actually get in there to change the sound card, which was a perfectly fine compromise on my Catan build, because light meat and dark meat I found are pretty much... they're similar enough to the sound fonts on used in Jedi Knight, well, Star Wars Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, that I'm comfortable with using them without modifying them at all. But that wasn't something I wanted to do again on another custom saber. So I nixed that design, and it was about at that point that I also started abandoning the idea of the vented petal thorns. I kept the rose theme, but I gave up on the whole idea of having a array of multiple petals. The stage of development was a curved lightsaber, and this lightsaber was going to be a curved Quillian lightsaber for pretty much until the last week of design, when I straightened it out a bit. It just... I had one massive problem with the curved design. I could figure out a way of getting the LED, the crystal chamber and the chassis inside of it, but I couldn't quite figure out a way of connecting the battery and the sound card, which were going to be in the chassis in the bottom behind the curve, and the LED in the crystal chamber. I couldn't figure out a way of getting all the wires through safely in a way that I was happy with. So I shelved that design and I straightened it out. And when I straightened it out, I realised it would probably be easier to just go for a full open core reveal lightsaber. So I started work on a removable, coming up with 3D printed removable core, had Shapeways print it, and then I really started on the work of building it itself. This build was actually relatively easy. Normally my builds are stretched out over a couple of months because I don't have the budget to buy everything all at once, and I tend to buy bits in dribs and drabs when my budget can cover them. Only this time, after 3 lightsabers, I had pretty much had enough material to get 85% of the way done without any additional purchases. So yeah, I started building. I used vinyl cut templates on this build quite extensively. I've done that in the past with my sonic screwdrivers, and it proved out to be very useful, much easier than laying things out. But it does have its flaws, namely that when you have something coated in a layer of vinyl and then you put it in a vise, it squeezes the vinyl out and it puts some wrinkles in the pattern and it messes it up a bit. So to counteract that, I started using the fact that things were wrapped in vinyl to etch. Use saltwater etching and etch the whole patterns, or the patterns of the things I wanted to cut, file, shape, or mutilate in any way, directly onto the aluminium, and that proved to be a really useful idea, because now that means that the patterns for the holes that I want are etched permanently onto the body until I destroy them. So there's none of the problems that you have, say, with layout fluid rubbing away, or cut peeling off, or marks not being deep enough and getting sanded away. It's etched into the body, and it doesn't take too long to do it. So that's pretty much what I did for most of the build. Yeah, that proved out really useful. So the last phase of the building, well, I tried to get everything done as fast as I could this time, because I set myself the rough deadline of having a lightsaber complete before I went off to spend some time with my family at Christmas. And despite all my improvements in build speed and having all the materials on hand, I couldn't get the thorns lit up in time. My idea was to run a fibre optic off the main LED into the thorns, but that didn't quite work out. It worked, but it was just way too dim. So my second idea was to have little 5mm LEDs in there, fed off the accent LEDs, fed off the Nanobiscotte's main channel, that would light up these, well, originally it was going to be these little acrylic and metal thorn-shaped quillions. I wasn't happy with this design. I finished them, but I really wasn't happy with them, and it didn't help that the quillions themselves are acrylic, which they break very easily. This is the last one I've got left of the original 3 that I made. The first one, I dropped it, and, well, I dropped the lightsaber and it just shattered clean off. The second one, I'm not sure quite how it broke, but it broke. So I had a bit of a think, and I figured that the simplest solution would just be to miniaturize a standard polycarbonate lightsaber blade tube and apply the same principles of having cellophane wrapped inside of it. So I found someone on the internet who sold 10mm polycarbonate tubes, quickly mocked up a bullet-shaped tip, cast a couple of those bullet tips in epoxy, cut the tubes to just about the right size, cut a ton of cellophane, and yeah. The principle works. It works a lot better on camera, of course, as blades always work better on camera. They quite literally pale in comparison to the main blade, mainly because they're just 5mm LEDs running at 25 milliamps, whereas the main blade is two high power Crees running at 1800 milliamps. So they do pale a bit in comparison, but they still light up, which is, as far as I'm concerned, which is mission accomplished. And yeah, I've now got a crossguard lightsaber-ish that I think personally is a better design than what they did with Kylo Ren's. So mission accomplished. Go me. Okay, that's really it now. I'm done. Shut up.